Hello and welcome to this video. This is round 8 coverage of the candidates tournament currently held in Moscow. Yeah, round 8 means it's the first round after the break. We get the second game that every player plays against each other. Half of the tournament is already done. Yeah, what happened? We have the game Aronian with white against Giri. It's the first to check. And we get a Queen's Gambit. Semislav. Okay, that's a sharp line. And Bishop g5 played by Levon. That's the most ambitious move in a way. e3 is the alternative. Now black can decide mostly between h6, knight bd7 and dc4 for the Botvinnik. Giri plays h6. This is the middle of the road move. It can be very sharp if white now goes bishop h4, or after bishop f6 it's usually more of a strategic battle. Yeah, that was played by Aronian. Understandable, I think. He also has played the sharp lines after bishop h4 like this, g5 first and then b5. Those are very, very sharp, but it's not really the kind of position maybe you want if you lead the tournament. So he played queen to b3. The interesting thing is that all this has a history. Just weeks before the tournament, there was a game between the two players, Aronian and Giri, in Zurich, and they had exactly the same. Queen b3 is an interesting move. It prepares the move e4. If white goes e4 here immediately, the problem is that black will take and check. And this is a bit awkward now, as white has to play some not very active retreating move, something like this. Yeah, now let's say c5. Black has no problem here whatsoever. This is the idea of queen to b3. White wants to go e4 takes, knight takes with a tempo on the queen without allowing the check. Black goes dc4, just preempting this idea and playing knight d7. Yeah, now e3 is played. Yeah, why not e4? e4, black is very happily answering with the move e5. He likes to see this pawn here actually, so that these will be traded and a pawn on d4 will go off the board. And if the pawn on d4 leaves, it means that he will have good squares for his pieces. For example, the bishop or knight can come to c5. This is also why white played the more restrained e3. Now g6. Interesting. Eh? Black wants to fianchetto this bishop, maybe bring the queen back and then play e5. This is standard nowadays in this opening to go for a fianchetto, not play the bishop to e7 or to d6. Now knight e4, queen to e7, and knight e5. This is still following the earlier game, Aronian Giri from Zurich. Knight e5 is an interesting idea. Black should never really take here, as this gives white two very promising looking squares. I mean, it's not like white wins, but it is simply white's idea, and black shouldn't play into that much. Check. He played the check. This is a lot stronger. Check. Takes. And king to e2. Yeah, doesn't look very nice. But what else is there? King d1 isn't any better. Bishop e7 back. Yeah, that bishop has got nothing to do there on b4 anymore. And here's the novelty. Aronian now plays the move f3. It doesn't look very threatening. He had played the move f4 in their earlier game, after which b6, king f2, bishop to b7, rook d1, rook d8, bishop e2. Yeah, it is a slow game where white has a little bit more space and good knights, and black has that long-term asset of the bishop pair. It is somewhat, I think it's about equal, this position. In the game, Aronian played f3, and you can really wonder what the big point of f3 is. I mean, I understand that you probably want to play king f2, but that is also done with f4. And why exactly is f3 being played? It's a bit mysterious in my book. Yeah, Giri goes for rook to g8. Again, not so obvious, but he wants to maybe play f6 and kick that e5 knight away. Or this one. Yeah, both is possible. Yeah, knight d7, king takes. Yeah, the king takes because black still wants this option, b6 and bishop to b7. Knight d2. Yeah, this was a bit more obvious, but it also doesn't lead to much. Black can ignore the knight, but he can also take, after which, let's say, rook takes, b6, then bishop here, or bishop a6 even. Yeah, that's possible. So like this is a total equality. Yeah, knight d2 went back, and again b6, bishop b7 is normal, and white now set up this f4 h4 thing, put his pawns on dark squares with this bishop being on a light square. Typical setup, quite solid. Yeah, the likelihood of a draw here is very, very high, I think. And in the game we saw a couple of trades, and now after knight c4 intending knight e5, Giri decided to go into this position, after which it is opposite colored bishops. Yeah, here there are quite a number of ways to continue, but it always will be very, very drawish. Aronian actually tries a little something here with this now. He could have played here and won a pawn, but the position here is also ultimately super drawish with rook c7 to come. Yeah, he tried that, and we had this here with the white king, black king being chased around a little bit, but there is no objective threats, and at the end they agreed to a draw here. Yeah, white is a pawn up, but he really doesn't have any winning ideas. For example, if yeah, let's say king to d2, rook to e3, and white is not even able to move his pawns. Yeah, that's a typical opposite colored bishops position where there is no forward. Both those pawns cannot move at all. Here black probably yeah, might even win the material back quite quickly, and he's very active, so no problems at all. So a somewhat unexciting draw here. It's not the most surprising result. Aronian is certainly okay with his score. At the moment he's not very hard pressed to do something crazy, and Giri is simply not the kind of person who's doing anything fancy with black, so a draw was quite likely here. Next game to check is Topalov Anand. Let's go for that. And we get a Queen's Gambit decline with knight bd7. Yeah, this opening seems to be Anand's main weapon here against d4 in this tournament. He has played this already for the third time. He had this with black against Aronian and black against Giri in the last round. And Topalov plays in the same way as Giri played, queen c2 and now bishop b4. That was identical. Yeah, now is the new idea. Topalov's new idea is to capture and play a3. Quite a logical continuation. Yeah, black now essentially has to take on c3. If you go back, let's say to e7, you go into a Carlsbad structure, the Queen's Gambit decline exchange structure, where you have gifted white the move a3, which is usually considered to be quite useful. Here even bishop f4 comes into consideration instead of bishop g5, which is also a little bit better for white in comparison if you can get this version in. So he has to take on c3 to make some sense out of the setup. Knight e4, tempo, castles. Yeah, so what is black's compensation? Yeah, compensation, I mean, for the bishop pair. He has got the better development and good pieces. Yeah, the knight on e4 is strong, and black is already centralizing this rook here. After b3, now it's an interesting moment now, what black should do. I was discussing this a little bit with Joel Benjamin while doing commentary for the ICC on Sunday, and I was suggesting this move as an alternative to what Anand did. Anand played the move c6, which is also probably the best one, but I was discussing this a little bit because black, with his better development, tries to open up the position, which is a little bit counterintuitive maybe if you look at this bishop pair issue. Yeah, with the bishop pair you want to open the position as white, so why would black open the position? Yeah, but he's got the better development. This is an interesting contradictory problem here. We had something similar discussed some rounds ago for the game, I think Svidler Aronian. Yeah, c5 is interesting. Black tries to open it up, but I'm not quite sure how good it is. If white takes here and knight takes, the development is really very okay, but it's still not quite clear how good it is. I mean, after bishop b2, maybe bishop d7, rook c8 comes. But the question is, in general, after c5, if white should take in the first place. It's maybe better to just develop here. Yeah, interesting. Queen a5 check now. A couple of options. I think c5 is interesting alternative, but c6 isn't bad at all. Yeah, bishop d3. All this is, I guess, kind of normal looking. This is also a reason why black has no problems here. He gets his bishop to f5, and from there he can engineer this trading maneuver quite comfortably. With those bishops traded, black shouldn't be afraid anymore of any minority attack on the queen side. Now, playing with b4 would actually be a pretty bad idea. For example, well, this is what black played, and now f3 by Topalov. A move like b4 is an entirely wrong idea here, as the c4 square has been severely weakened, and white is not getting in anything like a4 b5 here, with black controlling the square so reliably. This would just help black. Topalov's move f3 is a lot better. He wants to get something going in the center. a4, that's a good one, trying to maybe activate the bishop. And black activates his knights like this. Yeah, I think black has a rather comfortable position here. And given the choice, I'd probably rather be black here, but it's overall still pretty equal. Yeah, Topalov now plays a very, he plays a move that has to be considered carefully. He played knight to f4, getting rid of that e6 knight. It worsens his pawn structure and gives black basically an extra pawn here on the queen side. It's 4 against 3, and the white double pawn doesn't inspire that much confidence. Plus we get trades on the e-file. I think he was it was clear to him that he has to suffer a little bit here in this position, but should ultimately manage to draw. Not a very great prospect, but he's simply not in good shape in this event. Again here, not getting an interesting position at all with white. Yeah, so those rooks got traded.
Check.
And in this position, only black can be better and can try something. Yeah, black can set up the position easily in a way that the white bishop is never going to attack it. If you go a6 at some moment, for example, then even the a7 pawn is of a light square, and white's bishop is not ever taking a pawn. Still, it's very difficult to make any headway, and we can fast forward a little bit and see what happened. Anand ultimately it's a long shuffle. Pushed this h4 move. Yeah, understandable decision. You want to probably, on a good day, you get h3 in, and this pawn would be very, very helpful in cooperation with the black queen. On the other hand, it also can be weak. One issue here that we shouldn't forget is we tend to easily identify that the white bishop isn't looking so great. Yeah, we see immediately it looks at its own pawns. So that bishop isn't great, agreed. But there's still one issue. The black knight also isn't that great. And this is the thing. Yeah, you very easily see that the bishop is not good, but the knight here, it doesn't help much either. Especially a little bit later, like here. Oops, I'm sorry. A little bit later, here we see that after queen e3, black cannot avoid really the queen trade. Yeah, if black is keeping the queens on, then it might even be white who's better. Yeah, h3 is preventing the push here, and queen to e7 is coming. Note how bad this knight is. Yeah, the knight cannot go anywhere, and black now, for black it's already a little bit too late now to try to regroup here, as queen e7 is going to pick up this pawn or lead to other trouble. Yeah, black can do this, but has to give up that. Yeah, at the end, it's just one thing that black can do. He has to trade. And now knight to e6. It is exactly this line now that leads to a draw. Anything else would lead into trouble for both sides. So, yeah, king here. I mean, if black is not playing knight e6, then king h3 will pick up the pawn. So this has to be done. And now g5. Yeah, and here white went f5, which is the best move. There is no upside in taking. Yeah, this, and then like continue here. There's really absolutely no idea how white could ever win this position. The f3 pawn is pretty bad. Doesn't really contribute much, and black has a potential c5. So this is not a good idea. The alternative f5 is a lot better, because here black has to play knight f4, and this is a safe draw. Black should not retreat, as after f4 he's into trouble. Yeah, maybe he saves it, but there's absolutely no reason to get into that. Only white can be better in this position. So the check, after white has to take, pawn takes. And here, after king g2, they agree to a draw. After king h4, black even wins with c5. So this was mandatory. Yeah, and here there's absolutely no way forward. If black is getting too fancy with his king and trying to invade somehow, then g5 and the f pawn will run. So this is this is an important factor of the position. And in general, we would have something where both sides here are some kind of quandary. You cannot really do anything active. Yeah, both sides here will just stay and do nothing. Any kind of activity is bound to backfire. I mean, white can probably take here without losing, but there's also no upside to that. So a draw in this game. I think Anand is probably quite okay with the draw, and Topalov is basically out of the event with his current score. So he's trying to still play well, of course, but it doesn't really matter to him that much anymore in terms of a qualification spot. Yeah, now let's look at the two most interesting games of the round. You just start with Svidler Karjakin and see what happens there. Karjakin, one of the two co-leaders, and Svidler on a -1 score. So yeah, Svidler had missed many good opportunities in the event. He should be on a plus score, not on a minus score. If you just look at the games and see, okay, he could have won that one, he could have won this one. Why is he on a minus score? Yeah, so it doesn't help. You need to win the games. Just having good positions is not enough. Okay, let's have a look at this. Svidler Karjakin. In English opening, Svidler is playing c4 in this event, not really going with his usual e4 repertoire. And we follow a well-known line that has been tested over the last, I don't know, 30, 40 years. The most famous game with this is I think the second match game it was of the Kasparov-Karpov match in 1987, played in Seville, Spain. When Karpov played after this, rook e8 and f3, Karpov played there at the time sensational move e3. It was never played before. There had been games with the capture on f3, but e3 was a new idea that Karpov had prepared for, actually I think for Korchnoi, for the 1978 match, but never got around to playing it, and then he could use it here against Kasparov. Yeah, this is played also here in this game, and d3 was also Kasparov's reply. Yeah, white does not want to take that pawn. This pawn structure is just a bit too ugly. Yeah, if you want to see something real funny, you can look at this. Yeah, knight e4 is of course atrocious, but it's just it's just a very funny picture. Yeah, white is a pawn up. I hope he's happy with it. No, of course. White will play d3 anyway. This is a stronger move. D takes e3 is not that bad, but after h6 you should go to h3. Yeah, well, d3 is better anyway. Yeah, keeping this center fluid without a double pawn. Yeah, black goes d5. He has to develop somehow. And now queen to a4. That's an interesting move. It intends to recapture on c4 with the queen. If black now would do that, queen takes, white is actually in very good shape. That f7 pawn is under fire, and you don't have a very convenient move to cover it. I mean, something like this, for example, is just pretty awful. White has the better center, and he's got two bishops here. Black needs to be very, very careful here that those long-term assets don't become too dominant. He played h6, cd5, knight takes, and knight e4. So white got his knight around to that very, very good square. This is not a new position that has been played, for example, in some correspondence games. And certainly it should have been part of both players' preparation to some extent. Karjakin played really quickly, so it's very clear that he still knew what was going on. f5 and knight c5. What else? Yeah, now f4 is played. That's probably the sharpest move. Trying to expand here on the king side. One idea is that this bishop on g2 is looking really, really bad. Yeah? It doesn't have any scope. And we will see later that this will become even more pronounced. Yeah, white played bishop b2. That looks very normal. Rook b8. Yeah, rook b8 might look a little bit mysterious, but black needs to organize his position somehow. It's not so easy to do that. What move do you want to play here? The idea can be for white to play c4 here, or to advance the whole center, c4 and d4. We see that later. Yeah, that rook b8 was played. It also might involve this idea, which is very double-edged, but it can be part of the agenda. Yeah, c4 now by Svidler. This is the first new move, by the way. In some correspondence game, knight e4 was played. Yeah, c4, knight d to e7. The problem, or the drawback, let's say, of that c4 move is that it weakens the d4 square. The white bishop on b2 has a fantastic diagonal, but black has currently control over that square. If white gains control over d4 and can get something going on that long diagonal, he would have an excellent position. It's a very double-edged situation with those e3 and f4 pawns, limiting white on the king side and limiting the bishop on g2. But as I said, long term he has many assets. Svidler now plays a very, very double-edged move. He is definitely afraid that black manages to get in knight to f5 and knight to d4. Indeed, this is a scary idea for white, but it's not clear if his recipe is the right one. He went with the very radical move g4, just covering that square. But note, this is one of the most stupid looking bishops ever. Not ever, yeah, there are worse, but it is not looking very good. Yeah, that bishop is not having any prospects. If black here would manage to play g5 and completely shut this bishop down without getting killed, I mean, for example, here something like g5 doesn't make any sense because knight e4 f6 is deadly. But if he can long term keep that bishop here with the pawn being on g4, this is just an incarcerated piece. So a very risky decision here by Svidler. Yeah, b6 and the bishop to e6. All that is, I think, very, very logical. Now black is ready to play knight d4. It might cost the a7 pawn, but it's just too important to block that diagonal. Svidler's approach to this now is probably not good. He plays the move g5, and he really wants to like open up things there on the king side. However, there's a drawback, and a drawback that Karjakin is not showing. He played h5 in the game, but he could have taken this pawn instead. This would have been strong, simply for one reason. White cannot recapture. After knight f5, black's position is excellent. Note that he can easily neglect that knight, because after this and queen takes, black is just winning. This is too bad here for white. King h1, for example, there's knight g3 already. And after the capture,
check.
This is not ending well. So what is white supposed to do if he cannot take c6? Yeah, he can go back to e4, but then black happily jumps into d4 and has an absolutely great position here. Yeah, he's blocking the b2 bishop, and queen h4 is just around the corner with a big attack. This is great. This is really a great position. Yeah, it's not clear to me what white should have done after the capture. Maybe just neglect all of that and just play rook d1, trying to push d4. Yeah, but now again knight d4 is happening, and something like this, maybe this, and bishop d7 is just a good position for black. Yeah, he's gotten rid of that strong bishop on b2, and white's situation on the king side here with this bishop still doesn't look good. In the game, however, h5 was played, and I think after that the worst is probably over for white. Rook d1, trying to play d4, is prevented. Yeah, so white grabbed the pawn. Yeah, I think he can do that. It's not a bad decision. You might as well have a pawn for your yeah, let's say difficult to play position. I'm not sure how bad this is objectively speaking, but yeah, it doesn't hurt to take that pawn. Queen to d7 covers the c7, and queen back. The queen had to go back. He cannot stay there forever and risk getting trapped. So h4, and now sometimes h3 is an idea. Queen c3, intending d4 again. Now bishop f5 by Karjakin. That's a good move. It looks at this knight, makes it difficult to advance so easily with e4. That was not the only move. Black also had knight c6, for example, which was okay. Yeah, well, this happened, and now a very interesting move by Svidler. He plays h3, and this looks a little bit like some kind of baiting move. Yeah, please take that pawn. Yeah, it looks really strange that White is offering this pawn, but yeah, he probably was afraid that h3 from Black was even worse. Yeah, so it's a bait move in a way. So should Black take that bait or not? Probably he shouldn't, but in the game he did. Let's have a look at what happens if he does not take. The main alternative was knight to c6. The idea is simply to put that knight on that fantastic square and let the white bishop look, yeah, rather stupid on g2. This move was probably rather strong. The key idea is that now d4, which is the only move that really could question this decision, that this is not so great, because now you take, and this is a different thing, because after d4 that knight is not so stable anymore, and Black has ideas of just taking here on e4, maybe with the bishop. Oh, that was a wrong arrow. Maybe going with the bishop and then take, and you have some chance really for an attack. If White goes d5, then knight e5 is good. Yeah, here it's really questionable if White is going to survive here. For example, a line like this is spectacular and pretty strong. Yeah, this is
check.
A winning position for Black.
Check.
Quite nice. Okay, not forced, but it seems that knight c6 was a good reply, as d4 is not helping White that much, and in other cases, if White plays some slow move, I don't know, that one, then knight d4 is just yeah, it's no fun. Yeah, bishop back here or what, and I don't know, maybe this to make the queen mobile again. And Black's position is fantastic. He's a pawn down, but it's just a great initiative. And White's pieces look weird, especially f1 looks weird. Yeah, he took that pawn immediately, and I think, I didn't see the press conference, I think what happened here, Karjakin simply overlooked Svidler's reply, queen e5, attacking the f4 pawn. And now if you don't want to lose that, you more or less have to do this. And after queen d5, the queens get traded, and White's problem with this bishop is not as terrible anymore, as he's got king up and bishop h3 in some cases to trade off that dummy bishop. We shouldn't forget that White also has a pretty strong knight there on e4. It's not like all pieces are bad, it's just that the bishop is a problem. The position, I think, now is roughly equal. However, a little bit later, I think most of those moves are kind of obvious in a way, or at least easy to understand what they do. Yeah, Black is piling up on that a pawn, and White tries to break through in the center, where he's got this potential passer or chances to open up the position for him in a favorable way. Yeah, up to this point, I think that was all well played, and the position is about equal. White's idea here is to play the move d6 to dislodge that pawn, get this pawn, and then continue to play against that new pawn on d6. Here, Karjakin reacts in a wrong way. which was very difficult to see and play. The clock times here are not precise. They didn't have much time left. He played this, and this leads into some trouble. After d6 takes and rook takes, we already see that this is looking kind of awkward, and black really now has no big choice. He has to step out of this and go ahead to h5. Knight took d6, and this rook came over to look at the a pawn. Yeah, black is black is on the ropes here. After rook b5, he has to defend very precisely, and didn't manage. He played knight c6. The computer wants to play the rook to a6, but it probably both is very tough to defend. Now white has options. He can play move like knight to f5, keep a big advantage, or play the move that Svidler plays, which is believed to be the best one by the engines, g6 check. What's the point? Yeah, black basically has to grab the pawn, and now rook c1. All of a sudden that rook is switching over, and we immediately see that this position must be critical for black. The rook is coming in with check, and all of black's pawns also are weakish. I mean, especially those three, of course. e3 e3 will only fall when f4 gets taken. Yeah, so white has an attack on the king, and at the same time tries to win all the pawns. Very difficult to react to that. Yeah, this is all pretty logical looking, I guess. Yeah, white is picking up things. And now, first critical moment of the remaining game, let's say. Here, rook takes f4 was very strong. Taking this pawn first, not taking the pawn on h4, which is what Svidler did. If you take on f4 with the rook, here the situation should be pretty straightforward. The problem is that black has no good move. If he takes e2, then rook e4 is a good idea. Attacking this and just, if in doubt, pick up pawns. You can pick e3 up and probably h4 up for 2 pawns. This should win. Svidler's move also should win, but it's a little bit more complicated. Knight g6, rook g4, knight back to f8. Yeah, the knight is a good defender on f8, but it still wouldn't have helped if white now plays the right continuation. He has to find the move rook e5 now. This is still strong. It intends to play rook to e7 in case of black capturing on a2. So, for example, there is rook e7, g6, rook f4, and white is winning, because black can also not afford to take here, as knight e8 is a pretty straightforward win, threatening knight f6 with mate, or threatening rook g7 with mate to come. Yeah, rook e5 was a pretty clear and clean win. He took this pawn, however, and now after rook a2, white has to be absolutely precise to preserve winning ideas. What he should have done now is knight f5. Looks a bit weird to get into that self fork, but it's the only way to do it. After this, and then rook to e5, white still retains winning prospects. Not quite sure how much of a chance it is, but you can definitely continue. Something like this is the main continuation. White will win that pawn and enjoys this extra pawn, while black's king is still a little bit boxed in the corner. The engine just says white wins flat out, but I'm still a little bit I mean, it's not a super easy technical task to win this position, as you're down to 2 against 1 pawns, and there's always this likelihood that you get some ending just with the bare piece that you cannot win. So what happened in the game? This happened. And now g6. And this is not at all good anymore. Yeah, this check looks huge,
Check.
but what's the point? Leads nowhere. It just leads nowhere. There's no check on h7. And what is white's rook now doing? Very tough. Very tough. Yeah, c5. Okay, I'm taking this. And it's equal material all of a sudden. Yeah, so this check didn't really help. This is what Svidler did, and actually already offered a draw. Probably been very frustrated about the whole turn of events. I think he later said that he believed to be much, much worse at one point. Maybe, yeah, maybe. But he also was, yeah, a lot better and winning around here with some precise move like rook e5, for example. The game could have been over, and this would have been a huge result for the overall tournament, with Karjakin dropping down to +1, Svidler coming back to 50%, and maybe getting back into the race again. But he's continuing to play well up to a certain point, and then screw up a hugely favorable position. So a very disappointing result for the 7-time Russian champion here, Peter Svidler. Okay, let's look at the fourth game of this round and the most anticipated one. Maybe Caruana with white against Nakamura. A very interesting matchup. Nakamura was on a -1 score, yeah, after his win against Topalov. So with a second win in a row, he could get back into contention, really. Yeah, 50% after 8 rounds is not hopeless. And Caruana is sitting there with 7 draws and also definitely would like to win a game. He had his chances earlier in the event but didn't score. So we get a Berlin with d3. And before you fall asleep, this game will get very interesting. Okay, takes on c6. Knight bd2. In many cases, white castles early, but that's not happening here because white's idea is not to play with short castles, but actually with castling long. Very interesting plan. We have seen this in earlier games. Earlier this year, for example, there was a game between the Chinese Hope Vaiyi and David Navarra from the Czech Republic, which went exactly like this went here, up to this position. And here Vaiyi played the move h4, later h5, and then he castled short. Caruana is trying something similar. He castles long immediately, not using the pawns. This is definitely a much more interesting way to play against Berlin than to play with some play in some ending or some very, very slow maneuvering position. Here both sides will try to get at each other's king. Interesting, and I think also pretty good plan. Yeah, Nakamura now plays according to the tournament situation in a way, choosing the most direct, most aggressive move. He goes b5 and a5, just pushing the pawns. You can argue, if you look at the further course of the game, that maybe a move like c5 also would have been interesting. The idea is to clamp down on that square and potentially reroute the knight like that. It's a very strategically focused approach, and not so much trying to find a quick counter attack towards what white will be doing on the king side. It looks a bit slow, but on the other hand, black's position around the king also is not weakened yet. He has got everything back here. So white shouldn't have like a winning attack automatically on the king side. So this is an option, definitely. Just try to be strategic and put a knight here. Okay, b5 and a5. Knight to f5. Good attacking square. And now the next move is once you see it, or once you see the the consequences is strong, but it's not maybe that obvious. He goes bishop g5. Okay, f6 is the most normal move ever, and also probably the best one. And now Caruana just dropped back to e3. And what is the point now of this strange pendulum by the bishop? The point is that f6 is a move that quite often actually fits into black's plans long term. Cover e5 so that you can reroute those two pieces. But the main drawback is something different. Here white has castled long. And this means that g4, g5 now becomes a very serious option. Attacking that f6 pawn and breaking open the g file a lot quicker than it would be possible without the pawn being on f6. Knight c5, g4, bishop e6, and king to b1. Yeah, white had to take care of that a2 pawn. Cannot give it away. Yeah, and Nakamura goes b4. Now this is clear. We want to go for this checkmating race, and certainly a position that both players, from the general type of position, wanted to have. They wanted a fight, and they got a fight. The question is, however, how good is it for black? After g5, to be honest, I think white is probably just quicker in this attack. You can definitely argue about black's best defense now. He played the most aggressive reply. I think after that, black definitely is in some issues, in some trouble. Maybe he should play something like king h8, just step off the g file and being ready to answer g takes with g takes. I mean, white I think is also better here, but it's not a totally clear-cut affair. In the game, b3 was played, and Caruana reacts to that in a very cool-headed way. Just rook h to g1. Just allow black to take. Yeah, so this is what he did, yeah? Nakamura took that pawn. It's really not so easy to open lines there for black. Yeah, for example, if you try this, for example, and queen takes, there's simply no good follow-up. Yeah, where's the knight going? You can try something funny, but white is just attacking himself. He's not even contemplating taking that knight. Yeah, after this, black has to be quick. He cannot waste lots of time. The engine suggests as the best defense the move g6. This is not a move you would love to play. Yeah, playing a pawn move on that side where the other guy is attacking you. But maybe you have to do it just to slow down the whole course of action a little bit. Yeah, there is no clear-cut way for white forward now. He can try something like this. Check. And then maybe a3, keeping things closed. Note that here bishop b3 is not a good idea. Or actually, this is a playable move, but here black shouldn't take here because of knight to f7. Nice little idea. Yeah, this is a completely completely untidy, unclear type of position. I mean, unclear is wrong. I think white's better, but it's very messy, is what I'm trying to say. Maybe this is what black should have gone for. He took here, and now king a1. And here it's actually already difficult to find anything that is playable. Now the move g6 is not that great anymore. White can reply with just taking on f6 or playing this funny move. Yeah, directly trying to break through after knight takes, check. No, d takes e5 is also pretty yeah, pretty bad for black. I really think it's tough to still get a playable position. Maybe it's not possible anymore, which casts some doubt on that b5 a5 plan. Probably it wasn't that great, but I completely understand why Nakamura played like that. I mean, it's not looking that bad in the first place, and it's also exactly the kind of game that he needed. He needed to win this game. Okay, rook a1. King a1. What did black play? He ultimately decided to take the knight. Again, this is not what you love to do, because after taking, now white gets this potential dream square for the knight. He tried a3. Yeah, going for counterplay. King h8 is what the engine suggests, just trying to hold on. But after that, white is a lot better, probably with knight to h4, but also with knight to d2, which is what I prefer. White just will get this fantastic square for his piece. Yeah, that was played. And just this to keep everything closed. Yeah, knight a6 by Nakamura. This is still an interesting idea. Yeah, he tries to maybe go here. White now has to be a little bit careful, at least. The move knight d2, for example, is not a great idea because of e4, which at least irritates white quite a bit. He cannot take this, for example, as rook e4 takes
check,
and bishop check leads to a win for black. Yeah, this is
check.
Pretty bad. So what did Caruana do? Found a strong move, c3. The computer, oops, that was the wrong button. The computer actually wants to play d4 and like that even more, but c3 is perfectly good. It covers all the critical squares, b4 and also d4. White is having a winning position here. Bishop f8, and now the knight comes around. Rook g3 is a strong move. Black now cannot take on d3. I mean, okay, it loses just as the game continuation loses, but this is pretty simple and not putting up much pressure here. Bishop h6 is a decisive idea. Yeah, this is what he played, and now just keep it simple. Take that pawn and have the rook here on h3 in a menacing position. Bishop e5 and d4. That was the last interesting moment here. Queen to h5, which looks completely obvious, is not so good because of the capture here. After knight takes queen d4, black is actually alright. That counter threat of queen takes c3 is so awful that you have to give a perpetual. If white tries to cover this, there's rook e1. Yeah, and now white has to give a perpetual, otherwise you'll probably even lose. But this is also not necessary at all. He just played the move d4. Simple and strong, attacking that bishop. It went back, and rook g1. Now all white's pieces are attacking black's king, and white has extra material plus a good knight. Just king takes, rook g4, queen d5, and after c4 now, Nakamura resigned the game. So we got a winner in that American duel, a very important game, which basically ends the tournament for Nakamura. -2 after 8 rounds is impossible to come back from, but it opens up the path for Caruana for sure. He's now on +1 after these 8 rounds, and well, +1 is good. Yeah, it's just half a point behind the 2 tournament leaders, and the same score as Vichy Anand has. So everything is possible yet, or still, for Caruana. I think it was a good, interesting round with 2 very tense games. The 2 other games weren't that exciting, but I think the American duel and the Russian one, they both really held up to expectations or were beyond that. I hope you enjoyed the coverage of this 8th round. The round 9 video is just around the corner. Thanks for watching, guys.